Greetings and salutations, nerds. You're listening to Praying for Superpowers,
A podcast about the deeper meanings, intricacies, and messages hidden within nerd culture. I'm your host, Peter Jordan.
and I'm Trever Sharon. Today we are talking about D&D, the satanic panic, why it doesn't cause you to kill yourself or sacrifice yourself to Satan.
Why it's still talked down about
Yeah,
in general.
let's roll. I've been playing D&D since 2013, and it actually began with Pathfinder, which is an offset of D&D 3.5 because there are different versions, blah, 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 blah. And I thought it was the nerdiest thing and was super thrown off by it, didn't want to play. My friend Andrew Bowman, who coincidentally designed our website and our logos. The website's Praying for Superpowers. Check it out. Bad Spark Designs. They're awesome. But he got me into it, and I fell in love with the concept of communal storytelling.
Yes.
Because I have so many stories. I could write pages, and I have a little notebook that I have all of the shared stories of adventures that we've gone on, and the NPCs, non-player characters, that we've all invented together, the player characters that have just been idolized and forever will be part of the world, no matter what. And I love this game, but it wasn't always acceptable the way it is nowadays.
Yeah, I only started playing a few years ago because of you, and I had put it off for years, even though it sounded awesome, because of the satanic panic around it. I had talked about playing it in high school, and my parents, who I love, and I understand their fear because of the kind of the communal fear in our country about it, of like, no, Peter, like it'll bring darkness and it's too dangerous for you to play. You know, you'll get lost inside the game.
Yeah.
And I understand that. Like, I can see, like, if someone is really, really mentally unstable in some way, using it as an escape,
Totally.
you can definitely fall prey to that.
When I don't even think you have to be mentally unstable. I think that with anything, I mean, the ICD-10, which is a international diagnostic manual for counseling, in its newest edition, I think the 11th edition or whatever, it could be the 10th, they have video gaming as a diagnosable addiction. And you know, it has blue light, it has aspects of that are different than board gaming or role playing, but I think you can take pretty much anything too far. We can take nerdiness too far and dive into it. And I think some of what maybe a little bit of what the satanic panic was about was this obsessive nature of, I get to be something cool, I get to escape from reality, I get the powers that I'm praying for, kind of thing.
So what was the satanic panic?
Yeah, so the satanic panic, just for reference, Gary Gygax invented D&D based off of old war games created by war vets and using strategy, blah, 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 in 1974. This was 6 years before the 80s. Great math there, huh? And in the 80s, there was this really interesting period of time that's called the Satanic Panic, where everything was satanic. It was kind of, honestly, it was the conservative religious communities that felt morally attacked and undermined by metal music and by just that kind of like metal feel.
Ozzy Osbourne and all that.
Ozzy Osbourne. I mean, this is the time where Judas Priest was put on trial because there were 3 teenage boys who completed suicide and had been listening to a lot of Judas Priest. And they tried to make an argument that Judas Priest caused them to complete suicide. And that was kind of the same argument that people had with D&D, was that you would play D&D and that it was an introduction to the occult. Yes. And that your DM or your maze master would be part of an occult and get you to play the game so that you could learn the spells. And then
real spells.
And they were real spells. And, you know, to the credit of people back in the 80s, this was a time where news broadcasting and fear-mongering wasn't as prevalent as I think it is now. And so this was really new.
And I think along with that, in this time, like, nothing was that way. Like
Right.
Tolkien was fantasy.
Yeah.
There wasn't the realms that we have now. You know, fantasy books were really just emerging, and so for there to suddenly be this immersive world with magic and spells and demons and dragons and angels and all of this stuff,
deities,
yes,
that was an aspect too.
Is something that is like, it was this brand new thing, and the new scares us.
Yeah.
And so I think that on top of everything you just said, kind of.
Yeah. And also there were some Satanists. There was one, I forget his name, but he was the head of the Satanist church for a time, and he was espousing stuff about D&D just subtly because he pissed off a lot of people, and that was his goal.
Get the attention.
Other Wiccan priests that would made up stories about Gary Gygax going to him and asking him, "Are these the right spells?" and it's a lot of fear mongering, a lot of ridiculous stuff from both sides, because there were like on the conservative side, there were pastors who would get up on stage, and there were these tracks, the chick tracks. Which, you know, if there was a vice or anything that could possibly be sinful at all, there was a chick track about it. And there was a chick track about D&D where this girl, and it was made into a movie later on, and this girl starts playing D&D, her friend is playing with her friend's character dies, she can't live without this character, so she hangs herself. The other character was invited into this cult to learn spells and freaks out because her friend killed herself, and then you know, accepts Jesus as her Lord and Savior, and everything's fine.
Yeah.
And it was just this really, really bizarre and exaggerated time of just fear, total fear about something. And we've seen it progress. I mean, that really died away in the 90s. People kind of forgot about it.
It was there slightly. I mean, in 2001, there's an episode of Lizzie McGuire, which I loved growing up. Disney Channel, big fan. And it's called Gordo and the Dwarves. And Gordo starts playing an old D&D type game. And like he starts failing tests and talking in an accent and wearing a robe around instead of normal clothes.
Yeah.
And like Lizzie's younger brother ends up using electroshock therapy to get him to quit playing D&D because they're so worried about his soul, like, and his life. And it's just so weird to me to be like, wow, that's how people actually thought. Like, even in 2001, it wasn't a good thing.
Right.
It was no longer satanic, but it was still like, well, you probably shouldn't do that because it'll suck your life away. Like, people who spend millions of dollars on sports tickets don't have their life sucked away.
Yeah.
You know, in the same type of like sense, it's just because it was the feared, and so they kept it on the out.
Yeah. I think we have the great and mighty Matt Mercer to thank for how D&D has really become more popular. And we've talked about this earlier in the show. That nerdom is just becoming more popular. It's gaining more ability to be its own without the shame and the accusations that were against it for so long. Matt Mercer leads a show called Critical Role with Geek and Sundry, and it is fantastic. They really take it to a whole new level, just a bunch of voice actors. And I think they inspire people because they're having fun. We talked about this in the board game episode. Yeah. It's being together, doing something together, telling a story together. And what I think is really interesting, so my background is counseling. I'm in my master's for counseling right now, and I'm actually in a group therapy class. And my group therapy assignment is to come up with a group and to plan it all out so that once I graduate, I can execute it. And I am going to do a D&D therapeutic group for people, for students with autism.
Wow.
And I'm doing that because, one, there's a lot of research that shows that role-playing games are really good for building community, for building social skills, and for creating an environment that is safe to test consequences.
Yes.
You can go back and you can say, okay, that NPC isn't going to help you because you said this. We're going to rewind, and you're going to walk into the bar again.
Try it a different way.
Right.
I've played a game before with you and some friends, and someone was just like, I'm going to yell at the giant.
Yep.
And we were like, you know, we're going to make that not happen. We're going to pretend you didn't say that because you'll get killed and the story will end for you.
Yes.
We're going to keep moving.
Yep.
And what's great is I love that you're going to do that. I think that's brilliant. It is a way to show the possibilities of consequences, of teamwork, of I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. Patience, like so much. Playing your part too. If you're the healer on the group, and you're only shooting fireballs, and people start dying off,
you're not doing
your job, and that is your fault. The group, again, what's best for you is what's best for you and the group.
There it is. It's gonna be like the pineapple in Psych. It's like good. You look for that quote
every
every episode. I created. I kind of branded my group, which was really a fun experience for me. The same guy, Andrew Bowman, who designed our logo, was gracious enough to design 2 different logos. You're wearing one right now for the old one, and I'm wearing the newer one for Ogrid. So Ogrid was this half-giant barkeep that owned a bar called Ogrid's. And I'm really into episodic play. So this is kind of like Psych, where you have an overall plot sometimes, but they're all episodes.
Right.
You don't have to watch them in order because they're an encapsulated story each time.
Yes.
So I do that. So, the joke is everybody's going to know your name, but there's no guarantee on your character name because you've maybe only played it like 2 hours. So, and it's been really, really fun to be able to create this branding and invite my friends into it and kind of make Ogrid's my own. And honestly, we'll talk about this a little bit in our next episode of World Singers with Hoyd. Ogrid is kind of my Hoyd. He's, or at least what I think.
Yeah.
Ogrid is my ability to enter into the world as a DM and do all the cool stuff that I think would be awesome as a player.
Because you don't get to as a DM.
I don't get to as
For those of you that don't know, the DM's the Dungeon Master. They're the one controlling all of the non-player characters. The goblins you run into, the barkeep, the random characters that the other game players interact with.
Yeah, the atmosphere in the story. It's kind of a narrator.
Yeah.
But it has been so much fun because now I've got swag. I've got t-shirts and sweatpants and a DM screen that I created, all with the Ogrid's logo. And I have about 23 players in my group right now, and a few of them have gotten these swag items with me. And so it's cool to be able to walk around, and we'll meet up at random places, not even for D&D sessions, and we'll all have the swag on. And it builds up that team spirit kind of thing, because now it's like a sporting event almost.
It's like when you run into someone, I assume, who's wearing the same team jersey as you, right? And you're like, "Go Vikings," or whatever. And and then it's like Ogrid's.
Yeah. Well, and so something else that as we were preparing for this episode, I found was that there's a national Hall of Fame for toys. And it has things like Legos, Candyland, those really ancient little red trucks that you would sit in as a baby and get pushed around as well as D&D.
Really?
It made it on the National Hall of Fame of Toys.
It should.
So Legos and D&D, and which feels like a juxtaposition, but I think they're both toys that can develop things within us. Legos is a really beautiful way for us to practice our engineering and our logical thoughts and our spatial memory, and just really a positive toy for us to play with.
Yeah.
I think that also D&D is a really useful toy for us to play with because it builds the social aspect. It builds the teamwork. It allows us to test the consequences without having any real world consequences.
Yes.
We're able to say, you know what? I think that maybe my axe that I use to chop down goblins might be strong enough to get through this stone that's standing in my way. And now I have to do some math to figure out like how many hits I have to do in order to get through this rock, and maybe it'll happen. And it's really creative because you have all of the opportunity that you don't have in video games or board games. You can literally do you can try anything. Yeah. And that's what I say in my group all the time. Somebody will ask me like, "Can I do this?" And I'll be like, "You can try."
And I love that you do that. And the basis of the game is you roll dice as you play. Your roll dictates whether or not you succeed in certain things.
Yeah.
And I've been like, I'm going to run up the back of this troll and do a backflip and pull out my dagger, and I'm going to slice his thigh as I land, and I'm going to pose. And like, and he's like, okay, roll for your acrobatics to see if you can actually do the backflip. And I get a 20, which is automatic success, plus it's cool.
Yep.
And then just roll for the attack, 1 damage.
Yep.
Looked awesome, did nothing. And that's an aspect I love. It's like, okay, looking cool.
And if you watch some of these shows like Critical Role, or if you're involved in a game, the first 20 that's rolled, so you're rolling a 20-sided dice. You have different dice that have different sides. Some have 4, some have 6, some have 20. You roll a 20 pretty often. And you can tell, like, when the first 20 is rolled in a night, there is this cheer that happens. Like, everybody is like, whoa! You did it! Unless it's the DM. Right. And then you hear this one, like, quiet, and that's
or just like a
yes,
evil laugh.
I've grown pretty decent at my evil laughs, and it's fun. I grew up acting in high school. I was part of the drama club, and so D&D is my way as an adult to be able to act. I can, as a DM, I get the opportunity to act out several roles at once. As a player, I get to really invest into that role and say, like, I am the barbarian. I will cut you in half. I have no intelligence, but great muscles. And like, or I'm the young wizard, and I graduated from the wizarding school early because I'm so smart, but I have no social skills. And it's being able to dive into these characters, either exaggerate a part of yourself or be something so different than you.
Yes, and I love, we talked about it in our first episode, is the vicarious living.
Yeah.
It's not only experiencing things for yourself, but it's that imagination that we never want to have die off.
Totally.
Where we hope that in our adulthood, throughout our lives, we're able to still enter the world of hobbits and the world of dragons, and to have that childlike imagination. And this is our way to do that without looking completely weird.
And there's such a spectrum of writing stories, too. We've got Chris Perkins, who is just a beast at writing stories. He wrote The Curse of Strahd, which is basically D&D's Dracula. Ooh. And it's awesome. And then you've got guys like me and other people in Ogrids who will write these really elaborate backstories, like pages and pages and pages. I had one character, I'm a little bit ashamed to say this, 15 pages of backstory. From like birth till now, and it was intricate. There were adversaries, there were ties. It was like a really good short story. And I got to the session, and all that the other players knew about him was he was this he was this mute frog monk. And that was it. that was all of my 15 pages. It was literally just for me. And there are so many of my players who've done the same thing, and it's not disappointing because you've been able to imagine this great thing, and then you get to put it in practice, and you get to have secrets, and you get to live this really interesting adventure without anybody knowing, and then you can occasionally share it. When it's shared, it's like, oh, bro, that's so cool.
Wow. And I love how that cool aspect is not something that's like fought for anymore.
Yeah.
Like Stephen Colbert, Vin Diesel, Terry Crews, Jon Favreau.
Vin Diesel. You already said that.
But again, Vin Diesel.
Vin Diesel
plays D&D. Like, and it's just like that's cool. Like, it's Groot. It's the Iron Giant.
Yep.
Playing a character.
Yep.
And that's all his.
Yes.
And I love that that's a part of this culture, is that you can, and this is something I've always wanted to do, is take a character from Critical Role or from a D&D session with a famous person and take their character and stick it in our story and be like, and there goes Vin Diesel's character.
Yes.
Like, I get to interact with Vin Diesel.
There goes Grog.
Right. How cool is that?
Yeah. Yeah. The wonderful aspect of the community around D&D right now is awesome. And it doesn't even really, I mean, there's some differences, but overall, whether it's Pathfinder, Starfinder, D&D 4, which I don't know anybody who plays 4 anymore. or the original D&D.
There's Star Wars.
There's
versions
Star Wars.
of this game. There's versions that are all pirates.
There's a Munchkin D20 system, which is funny because Munchkin was invented to make fun of D&D.
Right, the gazebo. You must face the gazebo alone. No one can help you.
Which I guess we have time to tell that story.
So I love it.
In D&D, I will. Do you know the story well enough to portray one of the characters?
I believe so.
Okay, so I'll be the DM. We're gonna do some role playing for you right here. You didn't know that was gonna happen. You come across a grassy knoll, and atop the grassy knoll is a gazebo.
I'd like to perceive the gazebo.
You look really hard at the gazebo, and you can see there's like some ivy around some of the banisters. There's a few benches. It's painted white. Maybe a little bit old, as you can see some of the paint coming off. But it looks like a gazebo.
I'd like to hail the gazebo. Hail gazebo!
The gazebo does not do anything.
I'd like to fire an arrow at that gazebo.
It is a gazebo with an arrow in it. It's a gazebo with an arrow in it. Okay.
Okay. I think I'm gonna throw this magical dissipating spell at it.
It is a gazebo.
All right.
It is just a gazebo.
I'd like to stealthily approach the gazebo.
You approach the gazebo.
All right. Are there any? I'm gonna roll perception for traps.
There are no traps around the gazebo.
All right. I'm gonna take leaping attack and hit it with my axe.
The gazebo does not attack you, but the knoll does. Because there's a creature type in D&D called a knoll, and in this story, the grassy knoll became an actual knoll because the DM was pissed that this guy was just a gazebo. It's just a gazebo.
But that's the fun of the game, is that you can take something like that and just be ridiculous. And what's hard is that sometimes it's not just a gazebo.
Yeah.
And you're like, he's like, it's a gazebo, and you walk up and the gazebo turns into a vampire and kills you. And it's like, what?
It's a mimic. Yeah. So now, all of you who are kind of interested in getting into D&D, if you go to a session and you bring up a gazebo, and if you just say, like, is it a gazebo? The DM most likely will laugh and think you're the best player ever, because that is like an in to the culture. And it's a common joke. Like, most people I talk to who play D&D know about the gazebo.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly where its origins are.
Mm-mm.
But the fact that there is a joke and a common language, I mean, common language is huge in D&D. For camaraderie, I've talked to other players who I've never played with before, and I'll say, like, critical success on something, and they'll chuckle. I did it for me, but they appreciate it because they got it. Other people are like,
what?
They don't, well, what's interesting is they don't even realize you said anything. Like, it doesn't even count as words. You're like, man, my acrobatics is just not good enough. And they're like, oh, well, that sucks, man. And then somebody who plays D&D is like, better level up, man.
And it's like, I'd say I've only played D&D enough to know that that's a joke, but have no context. Which is great for me, because I'm like, that's funny. Don't know why.
Because D&D.
It's funny.
I would highly encourage any of you to play D&D. And, you know, there are game stores all throughout the Springs. Petrie's included. They're a sponsor of our show, and we so love Petrie's.
Yes.
The community around gaming is awesome there. On their website, they have dates where you can walk in and you can play D&D with a group of people, and they will teach you how to play.
Yeah.
For free. Like, they just get together every week and play.
And what's great, too, is Petrie's has a library, a game library. You can rent games from them. You can go in and play the games in their game room and just try out a game. So you don't have to drop the $40 to $300 to experience these games that we're talking about and that we love.
Yeah.
Which I love.
I mean, there are definitely games in my game room that I have spent way too much money on.
You wish you'd play tested, maybe?
Well, yeah, that too. I mean, talk about going back to our episode of great ideas and poor executions. There are definitely a couple.
Yeah.
A couple of them. But check out D&D. And even if not, I hope that you gained some appreciation for this game and this way of playing. If you want some more research, there are some psychological articles that I will be posting on my corner of the website, prayingforsuperpowers.com, later, probably the same day this goes out. But check it out. We love it.
Yeah, we do.
Thanks for joining us today.
Next time,
I'm not sure what we're going to talk about, but we do have a World Singers episode coming out this week.
Yes, so get excited for that.
Going to talk about Hoid.
One of our favorite characters.
And I'm waiting for Brandon Sanderson to tweet out to me and let me know whether or not Hoid is Ogrid, or at least his version.
Or Tom Bombadil.
We
will discuss at the beginning of the next.
Yeah. See you there.
I think it'd be really funny to have Bree correcting us every time at the end of the podcast. Like, leave it in. I think that would be hilarious. And you've heard Bree's voice before. She's the one constantly reminding her husband that it's a podcast, so we don't see the audience doesn't see us.